to all the Whovians out there, this is Magic Martin 666 with yet another Doctor Who spoilers and speculation. Just let you know that this one will include some very big spoilers, so if you're one of those people who doesn't like to read them or hear about them, then please shut off the video now. Still there? Good. Right, what I'm going to talk about today is the Dream Lord. I'm sure you've all seen last series and that fantastic portrayal by Toby Jones of the Dream Lord, but I'm going to talk to you about a character who appeared many moons ago called the Valeyard. Now the Valeyard, slightly different to the Dream Lord, but very similar in many ways. Essentially, what we saw in Amy's Choice was a character created by psychic pollen who was made up of all of the dark thoughts of the Doctor. Well, according to Trial of a Time Lord, which was a fantastic series starring Colin Baker back in the 80s, the Doctor was put on trial by the Time Lords for crimes against time, meddling with other affairs of different cultures and so on. But he was put on trial by a chap by the name of the Valeyard. Now the Valeyard was a Time Lord of apparently very high standing, wore a lot of black, lovely skull cap. There's a picture of him just there. It turns out at the end of a Trial of a Time Lord that the Doctor's own prosecutor was himself. The Valeyard actually means Doctor of Law. The Valeyard was every dark emotion ever thought or created by the Doctor manifested himself in a person. Now, according to the episode, the Valeyard appears between the Doctor's 12th and 13th regenerations. Now, this is kind of a bit of a bone of contention on the internet. Whether the Doctor can regenerate 13 times, i.e. he has 14 lives, or whether he has 12 regenerations and actually only has 13 lives. Because with the Master, we know that the Master had reached the end of his 13th regeneration, and then he turned into the Skeletor figure that we've seen before, the kind of emaciated Time Lord, the skeleton zombie creature, whatever you want to call it. Now, although Matt Smith is the 11th Doctor, he's not actually the 11th Doctor, he's actually the 12th Doctor. Bit of a strange one. In theory, if the Doctor regenerates 10 times, that means he starts off on number 1 and ends up on number 11. Well, he's actually regenerated 11 times already. We saw the Doctor regenerate in Journey's End. He regenerated, but stopped the regeneration cycle apparently, putting the regeneration energy into his own severed hand, which created the alternative Doctor, the Dr. Donna, the alternative reality Doctor. Well, that Doctor you saw there on Bad Wolf Bay is actually the 11th Doctor. Matt Smith is the 12th Doctor. I know, slightly confusing. Which means that he's currently on his 12th, which means between his 12th and 13th regeneration, so at some point during the timeline of Matt Smith, he is going to become the Valeyard. All of those evil emotions inside him are going to manifest themselves as the Valeyard. If they're going to keep the story canon, in theory this should happen sooner rather than later. We've seen it happen with the Dream Lord, perhaps we'll see it in real life. Okay, moving on to the fantastic, brilliant book 2011 of Doctor Who. I'm sure most of you got this for Christmas. In the book, on page 71, there's a fantastic section called Dream Lord Teasers. The Dream Lord has started to give us little bits of information, a few spoilers, a few speculations as to what's going to happen in the new series. Now, there was a lot of talk about whether these things were real or not, whether they were just made up. Well, what we've seen recently is a lot of these spoilers and speculations have started to come true. Now, as I go through the list, I will I'll give you my thoughts and feelings on them. Now, some of these I've got absolutely no idea what they're about. I'm sure if you scour the internet you'll find lots of people's ideas, but these are a few. I'm going to go through them in order, so there they are on the screen, and this is how they look. Right. The Doctor will be on trial twice. Now, Neil Gaiman has already revealed that in his episode he's using ideas which are inspired by the War Games. Now, the War Games was Patrick Troughton's last episode, also Jamie McCriven's last episode, and it featured the Doctor going on trial. So, the Doctor's going to go on trial twice. Well, I'll leave that to your own ideas. Right, who controls the light sculptors? interesting little thing there. For me, if you take the word light and the word sculptor, you can change that for stellar engineer. Of course, as we know, the stellar engineer was Omega, who I've spoken about already. Perhaps the return of Omega, or who controls the hand of Omega, possibly. You won't believe what's buried under Wembley Stadium. Not a clue. Scared of the eye in space? You should be. Well, the eye in space could be a couple of things. Firstly, it could be the Atraxi, because the Atraxi are basically big eyeballs in space, or it could mean the Eye of Harmony. It could be the black hole, and it could be another little hint at Omega there. Take up thy sins and walk slowly. Not a clue. There won't be a pub quiz on Tuesday because there won't be a pub. Great line, but again, not a clue what it's about. Right, these are interesting. Bow Guest is cool. Bow Street Runners are cool. Bromley by Bow is cool. Now, we've already heard that there's a two-parter called Gangers and the Rebel Flesh. Now, these two are concerned about cloning. Now, there's been speculation on the internet about the fact that whoever is the villain in that episode will be attempting to clone the Doctor, and indeed clone the TARDIS. Well, this is a massive spoiler, so if you don't like your massive spoilers, please do shut off the video now. Okay, here we go. This video was taken on, I found this on DoctorWhoSpoilers.com, but it was linked to a Doctor Who Locations website. It's a video, sorry, not a video, just a picture from a most recent filming in Cardiff. It's a TARDIS outside a warehouse, which is where the gangers are being produced. Gangers being short for doppelgangers, by the way, meaning kind of replicants. Well, who's the best people for cloning in the universe? It's the Sontarans. Now, this is interesting because there was a rumour going around, at least there was a declaration by one of the executives, not Moffat, but one of the other executives, saying that no previously seen monster will return in this series. Well, it looks like that's a big lie, because there we have a Sontaran milling around outside the TARDIS. This actually harks back to the Two Doctors story, where we saw the Doctor being experimented on by androgums and also by the Sontarans, because they wanted to extract something from the Time Lords called, I think it's called the Rassilon Imperative. I may be wrong there, which is a part of the genome of the Time Lords, which means that they are able to travel through time. So, worth looking into that one. What else have we got? 4th of August 1982. Happy birthday, Mum. I really should have checked that one out. Some lies are too much for the psychic paper. That is from the Christmas special. We saw him try to tell the young Kazran that he's actually a very sensible adult, and it just was a load of squiggly lines. So that's some lies are too much for the psychic paper. I won't take calls from that Prime Minister. Again, not sure. Mark, where are you? Don't have a clue. The only water in the forest is the river. Well, obviously, when you think of river, you think of River Song. Well, that kind of harks back to me at the episode Forest of the Dead, which was about the silence of the library. The first episode we saw River Song, the death of River Song, and she was the only water in the forest, in theory. What awaits the TARDIS at the 0 point? 0 point would suggest like the start of the Big Bang. We've already kind of had a Big Bang storyline, haven't we? 12 years on and Rory's still terrified of Granny Granger. Granny Granger, to me, it sounds like a fairy tale character or something like that. We know that Mark Gatiss's episode is got the... It was going to be called What Little Boys Are Made Of. He's going to be using now, by the sounds of it, the title Night Terrors. It's all about things that frighten us. So, again, that could be what Rory is afraid of. I Was Lost in France. Now, the only time the Doctor was lost in France was in City of the Dead, and that was set in Paris. That episode was all about alien replicants. People who looked perfectly normal, but as soon as they ripped off their skin, underneath they were actually hideous tentacled beasts. I'll come back to that in a moment. How could a fellow Gallifreyan stoop so low? Well, that suggests that there's another Gallifreyan who managed to have escaped the Time War, perhaps the Rani. I very much doubt it'd be the return of the Master, but interesting little thing there. The Horror of Bangkok. Not a clue on that one. Give it up, sweet corn. The spelling of sweet corn is a bit weird. Not sure there. Argonite here? Question mark. That was just argonite is possibly some sort of space metal, maybe something from Gallifrey. An ordinary block of flats? Question mark. Well, the last flat we saw was, of course, in the lodger, and the upper level of the flat turned out to be the prototype TARDIS, and we've already seen on the trailer that the proto TARDIS will be returning in the new series. In fact, River Song looks around it herself, so perhaps an ordinary block of flats turns out to be the TARDIS. Maybe like how the TARDIS we see is stuck in the form of a phone box, maybe that TARDIS can only take on the form of buildings. We don't know. It's got a broken chameleon circuit. If you saw them walking down the high street, what would you think? I don't think you'd think anything at all, Amy. That, again, to me, suggests the replicants, the idea that there are these aliens living in, living wherever, potentially living in America. The first episode's in America, and perhaps the Silents are a race of replicants. Maybe they're a race of beings that are like body snatchers. Maybe they're hiding within the skin of humans, much like we saw the Slovene do back in the first series. Find the lady before she finds you. Not a clue. Margaret come back. Again, not sure. The Doctor defeats the Sahara Desert. There's already been speculation on the internet that the Doctor will do an episode set in Egypt where he takes on the Cybermen. So that could be when he defeats the Sahara Desert. Also, you may have noticed that in almost every interview that Matt Smith does, he seems to, in one way or another, mention the Tomb of the Cybermen, which he claims to be the first episode that he really, really liked, starring Patrick Troughton. Potentially, Tomb of the Cybermen, that's kind of easily translates itself to ancient Egypt, I think. So, another little speculation there. Susanna is still alive. Well, we don't know about Susanna. The only Susan that we've seen is, of course, the Doctor's granddaughter, and she is potentially living on Earth, in Earth's future, shortly after the Dalek invasion of Earth. So, potentially she's still alive, depending on where you stand in the timeline. Mill Green on fire, not a clue. The Doctor will get married twice. Well, we've already seen him get married once, because he got married to Marilyn Monroe during the Christmas special. So who will he get married to a second time? Perhaps River Song. Port... How do I pronounce this? Sorry. What are the dangers of Port Olveron? Olveron? Well, we know that one of the episodes is going to be set in a port, because it's talking about pirates. We've seen a few of the videos that are online at the moment about the Pirates episode. We know that Amy Pond does a bit of swashbuckling, and we found out now that the monster in that is going to be the Sirens. The Sirens are, of course, mermaids, evil mermaids, and one of them is going to be played by the beautiful Lily Cole. So that's going to be quite exciting. We've got 502, but never 503. Not a clue. Beware of the kites. That's kind of an odd comment. A pillar of salt, yes, but not because she looked back. Looking back is good. Not a clue. They'll have to get a new name for Thanksgiving. These are all brilliantly convoluted. They're fantastic. Pay attention is not really her. Again, that kind of represents the whole replicant idea, the idea that people aren't really who they are underneath. Treading through sand on the night they come back. Well, again, that's treading through sand could well be the Sahara Desert, and again the return of the Cybermen. The shuddering brethren, they'll stick in your mind. Not a clue, not a clue. Very exciting. I'm my own Doctor. That almost suggests that there's another Return of the Future Doctor, the two Doctors seeing each other. Octavian wasn't lying. Well, the Octavian was, of course, Father Octavian, Brother Octavian, one of the warrior monks, anyway, who potentially is from the cult of Omega. Mysterious semblance at the Strand of Nightmares. Great, elaborate stuff, but not a clue what it means. And the bones of the TARDIS. Well, once again, we have heard about the idea of them cloning the TARDIS, and potentially they need to get at the bones to get at the bone marrow or the DNA of a TARDIS. Very exciting. So, lots coming your way very, very soon. Keep them peeled, keep listening. And please do check out my other videos, and if you haven't seen them already, please do leave some nice comments. I'm really pleased with how well my Omega video has done now. I think it's got about 3,500 views, which I'm very proud of. Thank you all so much. So for the whole of the Hooniverse, have a great afternoon. Bye bye now.